What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Janus, creator of Pinoy Tech Dad. Today we're going to be talking about the Poco F3 and the Poco X3 Pro. And by the end of this video, hopefully I'll be able to help you guys make that decision on which phone to get between these two. Now, before we start, this video is sponsored by GoDeal24.com. If you're looking for very affordable Windows 10 and Windows Office 2019 activation keys, this is where you need to go. And I'll tell you more about GoDeal24.com later on in the video. So these phones are Poco's new offering to gamers out there, and it's actually a little bit confusing because these phones dropped at the same time. I understand that a lot of people are having a hard time making that decision, especially because these two phones are really good. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to check out a full review of both of these phones, I do have a review of the Poco X3 right there, and then we have the Poco F3 review right there. So make sure to check out those links if you want a detailed review. So for this video, we're just going to be taking an overview of these two phones and find out which one is for you. So let me just start off with what the Poco X3 Pro has that the Poco F3 doesn't. The Poco X3 Pro has a headphone jack and an expandable memory card slot. Just a quick note on the expandable memory card slot. If you do opt to put a memory card on this, that means you won't be able to use this in dual SIM card mode. Now, moving on to the Poco F3, while this doesn't have an expandable memory card slot and a headphone jack, this does come with a USB-C to a 3.5mm headphone dongle. On top of that, this is now 5G capable. Now take note that the 5G network on this is not dual 5G. You're limited to only a single 5G network and an LTE network if you choose to use this with a dual SIM card. And on top of that, this also has an audio zoom feature, which might come in handy for those who really need something like that in their arsenal. So if you guys want to see this feature in action, I have that in my full review. And of course, the F3 has an AMOLED display versus an LCD display on the X3 Pro. And of course, we'll be discussing the dimming issue on the F3, but let's go ahead and check out the performance on both devices. So the Poco X3 Pro has a Snapdragon 860 processor versus a Snapdragon 870 on the Poco F3. So that means the Poco F3 will perform way better than the X3 Pro. Now, these are not just hypothetical things that I'm saying. These are things that you'll actually see and experience, especially when you're gaming. So when it comes to gaming, expect the Poco F3 to be able to run all of your AAA games at their highest graphical settings as compared to the Poco X3 Pro, where you might need to tweak some of those graphical settings in some games. But for the majority of the AAA games out there right now, the Poco X3 Pro can actually handle them at medium to high graphical settings. So it really depends on the game that you're trying to run. So for example, if you're gonna run PUBG Mobile on this, then this will be able to handle that perfectly, even at maximum graphical settings. But I know most of the PUBG players out there who take PUBG seriously are actually running on smooth extreme settings. So if you are one of those players, then either one of these phones will work perfectly for you. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself and already talking about gaming on both phones, but let's go back to the overall performance. For the X3 Pro, this is an improved Snapdragon 855 from 2019. And for the Poco F3, this is an improved Snapdragon 865 from last year. So both of these phones come with Android 11 and MIUI 12 on top of them. And then they also have the Poco launcher as well. We have an AMOLED versus an LCD panel. Now, both devices are running on 120Hz refresh rate. However, the Poco X3 Pro has an adaptive refresh rate, which means this will automatically adjust the refresh rate from 120Hz to 60Hz and vice versa, depending on the application. On the other hand, the Poco F3 doesn't have the adaptive refresh rate, which means if you select 120Hz, it will run 120Hz on all of the apps, even on your home screen, even on your browser. But But I think the most important thing for you guys is to see the difference when it comes to the display, especially because the Poco F3 has a known issue, which is the overly aggressive dimming function. I mean, it's supposed to be a fail-safe mechanism. However, we don't have the option to turn it off in the menu. So I think this must be something that Xiaomi or Poco must address just to give the users an option to turn it off, or maybe even just adjust the dimming function, because the dimming function is overly aggressive in the sense that even if the phone is not running hot, it will dim. And it doesn't just affect Genshin Impact playthrough. It affects all of the games that I've tested. So if you guys are kind of sensitive to the brightness adjustments, the dimming issue, then I think the Poco X3 Pro would be a better option for you, because this one doesn't have any dimming issue at all. There you go. For those who are concerned about the dimming issue on the F3, that's something you guys need to think about. However, if you guys are just like me and you set your phone display to auto brightness, this might not be that big of a deal for you. If you're going to be outdoors most of the time, then I think the Poco X3 Pro might be the better option for you. But if you're like me, who's always just indoors and isn't too bothered with the dimming issue, and it's gonna be fine. It doesn't take away from the actual quality of the display. It still looks really vibrant. It still has more contrast than the LCD display, but I'll let you guys be the judge. Let me know what you think. Alright, so moving on to gaming, which one performs better? Actually, the Poco F3 performs better, hands down. Not only does this have a better processor, but this also performs way better when it comes to thermals. When I was trying to push things to the maximum graphical settings on the X3 Pro, this got hot faster than the Poco F3. So with the Poco F3, this can handle high graphical settings, maximum graphical settings for most games without even sweating. You don't really need a Funcooler to really cool this down, except for Genshin Impact. Now for this one, if you want to play on the maximum graphical settings for most games, you might need a Funcooler to really cool this down. Your other option is to adjust the graphical settings to medium, or one tier lower than the highest graphical settings, and this should run fine. But another advantage of the Poco F3 over the X3 Pro is that this one has a 360 Hz touch sampling rate, which means this is going to be more accurate when it comes to response time when you're pressing the buttons on your display. Whereas the Poco X3 Pro only has a 240 Hz touch sampling rate. I mean, that's not bad. It's actually very decent for a gaming phone, but again, 360 Hz on the Poco F3. So those are the major considerations when it comes to gaming when you're checking out the Poco X3 Pro and the Poco F3. As to battery performance, both of these phones' battery performance really depends on how you use these phones. For example, if you're a heavy gamer, then expect to charge both of these phones regularly within the day. And it also depends on other factors as well, whether you're using maximum brightness or whether you're using Wi-Fi or mobile data on this. So I can't really talk much about my battery experience versus what you could expect, because your mileage may vary. So again, battery performance is really dependent on how you use your phones. Now, finally, let's go ahead and talk about camera comparison. Both of these have Sony IMX582 sensors. So does that mean that these phones have the same camera quality? Not quite. You'll see that the Poco F3 has better camera quality. And you can see as well that the video capability of the Poco F3 is better than the Poco X3 Pro. So if the camera quality of a phone is something that is a huge factor for you, then obviously the Poco F3 wins that battle against the X3 Pro. Now, before I give you my final thoughts, you can purchase very affordable Windows 10 and Windows Office 2019 activation keys from GoDeal24.com, and here's how you can do it. So first off, of course, you have to click the link and add it to your cart, and make sure to use the discount code that I have in the description box for you guys to be able to get that huge discount. And once you have that discount, you can also purchase as a guest, or you can register. So the choice is up to you. And then now you can pay using your credit card or your PayPal account. It's so easy and it's so affordable. Go ahead and check out the link in the description box so you guys can purchase your own affordable Windows 10 or a Windows Office 2019 activation key from GoDeal24.com. Which phone should you get? F3 or X3 Pro. So if you guys have enough budget, I think the overall winner for this one is the Poco F3. It has an AMOLED display, and even though it has some dimming issues, it's not a deal breaker for me. This is something that could potentially be fixed, and I'm crossing my fingers for that. Now, for me, the most attractive feature of the Poco F3 is its chipset. The Snapdragon 870 can last you for several years, maybe 3 years at the least. Think of it as your legitimate successor to your Poco F1. So if you're coming from a Poco F1, the Poco F3 is a great successor to your old reliable phone. For the Poco X3 Pro, this is something that those who are on a tight budget should consider if you are looking for a gaming phone. Of course, this is not gonna perform as well as a Poco F3, that's a given, but that doesn't mean that this is a slouch when it comes to gaming. This is still a gaming beast in its own right. At this price range, this is definitely one of the best 4G phones that you can find in the market right now at the mid-range level. Now, if you already have the regular Poco X3 NFC, please keep your phone. Don't upgrade yet. Don't buy into the hype. I mean, if you have the Poco X3 with a Snapdragon 732G, the Poco X3 Pro won't give you the most satisfaction if you're coming from the regular Poco X3. Both of these phones are crazy good for the value that they provide, but ultimately you are the one who should decide, and that all depends upon your budget and of course everything that I said here in the video. So anyway, that's gonna be it for my comparison between the Poco F3 and the Poco X3 Pro. Hopefully this video was able to help you make that decision, and of course if you guys want to get either one of these, I'll put the links in the description box. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell button so you can watch more videos like this in the future. That's it for today, guys. Keep safe and have a great day.